Hello, my name is Andrew Creeman. I study creative arts as a creative writing major and a theatre minor in Australia in my final year. I'm here to help you understand the current situation facing the world and what you can do about it. The United States is threatening to fall apart. It is currently fractured. Groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter are calling for the end of police, prisons, and an end to the current system of government. News organizations and groups like the Lincoln Project and Republicans Against Trump are promulgating left-wing propaganda faster than the White House can even reply to the accusations. A lot of good things have been stated identifying the true motives of some of these groups, but I find many people not so familiar with the nature of what's going on. The problem you are facing is Marxism. The goal is socialism leading to communism, directly from the Communist Manifesto and the writings of Joseph Stalin. The political class enabling it often call themselves democratic socialists. In short, this is the communist revolution of the United States, posing as a civil rights movement. The way Marxism operates is that you must view all conflicts of history as one of class warfare. Generally speaking, Marx and Engels identify two groups of citizens: the proletariat, or the working class, and the bourgeoisie, the upper class, the privileged class. One works the factories, one owns them. Marx viewed the proletariat as oppressed, and the bourgeoisie and all their methods as the oppressor. Their idea in the Communist Manifesto was that, in order to create peace, the lower class must seize the means of production and take control of the factories from the upper class, and remove all bourgeois methods that could create a class of owners, in order to create a classless society. This society has a vanguard at the top that tells this new victorious class how to think, work and act, what is important and what is not. All directives must be obeyed. The theory behind it is that it will create a society in complete harmony with one another, without hierarchies or inequalities. Now this sounds good in theory. No one likes inequality. By that measure, it's very attractive to young people wanting to make a difference. Unfortunately, Marxist political systems tend to be terrible in practice. It often misdiagnoses the problem, or the source of the problem, presents an awful solution that doesn't solve the problem, and the methods of enforcing the solution are horrifying. The Communist Manifesto advocates for violence to be used against the bourgeoisie. Maintaining their utopia is made possible with violence as well. And any revolutionary act to take them down is to be supported. Truth and lies are the same, so long as they achieve their revolutionary goal. Now, what does that have to do with today? Well, there is an extension of Marxism called cultural Marxism, also known as critical theory. In cultural Marxism, you take the same dynamic of oppressor and oppressed and apply it to every aspect of society, infusing all existing maxims, definitions, and interest groups with this Marxist view of the world, and giving all movements and maxims the same problem, solution, and goal: to destroy the state, and to label all methods capable of destroying the state as human rights. A key tenet of Marxism is that truth is provisional, as opposed to Aristotelian essentialism. In essentialism, you have the truth, rooted in metaphysics, which does not change, but is revealed in greater layers as time goes on. The truth is inherent in the object. People are unique. People are made in the image of God. People are equal and are the children of God. The essential truth remains, but we have a more thorough understanding of the truth over time and respond accordingly. However, when truth is provisional, truth exists only for a time, then to be replaced. What was true before is no longer true now, and what is true now will no longer be true in the future. Truth is not inherent in something's essence. Truth is reading. Reading you can write over, until it's no longer considered true. The truth, then, is determined by social agreement of how the object is read. We live in an age where saying male and female is offensive, where saying only two genders exist is offensive, saying black people and white people are equal is offensive, supporting traditional marriage is offensive, where the Bible is offensive, where prayer and God is offensive. These views are made to be silent in discourse, and often excluded from it, while those who silence it take more power in an effort to overthrow the system. An example of this comes from the New Feminists. Are there more men than women in a leadership position? Well, that's sexism leading to inequality. If it's not inherent sexism, it's systemic sexism, encouraging performative acts of sexism on men and women, leading to inequality. Does this oppressive system have a name? Yes, they call it the patriarchy. What's the solution to the patriarchy? To tear down the entire system, and all methods that could maintain it. Beauty ideals? No, beauty ideals come from the patriarchy and oppress other kinds of women. They must be destroyed. Gender norms? No, they are patriarchal and draconian and must be destroyed. Genders themselves? No, it's wrong to oppress someone with the sex of their birth if they want another. Trans rights are human rights, and arguing against it is sometimes considered a crime. Pregnancy? No, that can oppress a woman. Violence against the child in the womb is considered a human right, even up till the moment of birth. Even if video exists, and it does, of the child screaming before it dies. That's why conservatives are a natural enemy to Marxists, and tend to be their main targets. Conservatives conserve traditions and history. It's not a right-wing ideology, it's a state of mind. They say, your argument is fundamentally incorrect. Go back. You cannot uproot a fence if you do not know why it was built there to begin with. Instead, today the Marxists try to shame that person and not often debate them, using unsavory terms such as Nazi, racist, and bigot, and encourage others to do so as well. Their argument will become the dominant one way or another. The truth in Marxism is not Aristotelian, it's social Darwinian. It's ideological human wave tactics, aiming to consume even the possibility of oppositional force. Right now they have a loud voice and a large army on their side, many of which are recruited from universities, the Marxist recruitment centers that they have become. Stalin viewed socialism as above capitalism in the evolutionary chain. When you understand that, it makes sense when Stalin says, in order not to err in policy, one must be a revolutionary, not a reformist. The Marxist you are facing today is not about reform. The Marxist of today cannot abide a conversation about reform. The Marxist of today must tear down the system and all that sustains it to get the power they want. In Marxism, politics is pervasive. This is core. All beings are considered political beings, and all actions are considered political statements, even if they are passively made. There are many who disagree with the narrative of Black Lives Matter and the radical left. Yet it's been made impossible to analyse, question, or debate the narrative without immediate extraordinary repercussions. Why is that? This has been made possible by at least 3 different types of dialectics, or the debating of opinions, operating in unison. Dialectic materialism and historical materialism, invented by Marx and Engels and based on Hegelian dialectics by Georg Hegel, of which his dialectics also appear to be utilised. Dialectic materialism measures people, events, and groups by their material wealth and helps constitute their definition as a human being. Sounds innocent enough. Measuring haves and have-nots is not original to Marxism, but it goes further. Those who have less are oppressed. Those who have more are oppressors, often irrespective of context. This is because they exist within a regressive state system like capitalism. Oppressed and oppressor are inherent to a person's being and to all their methods. Oppressors are in a state of privilege, and all their actions are privileged and oppressive. Do you have more than another person in some manner? Then you have privilege, and either you or the system you operate in are oppressing those who do not. Historical materialism identifies a human being as inherently historical. It takes the same principles of dialectic materialism and casts a look at material wealth across history between groups. Again, sounds innocent enough, but it goes further. The analysis from these dialectics then inform the definition of a person's being today irrespective of where they might be placed under dialectic materialism. Today is subservient to yesterday, rather than the other way around. An oppressed ancestor of the past, be it by individuals, groups, events, or systems, may mean a person of that same race is considered an oppressed person today, because the whole race is considered oppressed, irrespective of the current system, circumstances, or the personal decisions of this individual, good or bad. Because of the history of slavery in the United States and civil rights movements that were needed to fix injustices, a black person today under these dialectics is read to be less than a white person, irrespective of circumstance. A white person inherently has privilege, merely by existing. A white person from a poor neighborhood with a poor education and a poor family background is an oppressor to a rich black person in a good neighborhood with a good education and a good family background, because the historical material wealth of a race is inherent to the definition of human being a race belongs to. That's why you might be told, it's not about any individual's experience of oppression. It's about the collective experience of oppression, made possible by the system. Now, these are wide-ranging dialectics, and not often applied correctly. The ability for you to misdiagnose the genuine problems of inequity are high, particularly when violence is justified in the Communist Manifesto against those who disagree with the conclusions. And people do disagree. But disagreement might stop revolutionary progress. Disagreement must be banned. And since a ban can't be legislated yet, they must use another form of oppression. The method of controlling how dialectics are even produced or discussed, meaning the dimensions of the debate and how they are formed, is with a third dialectic borrowed from Hegel. Hegelian dialectics exists only within the realm of ideas, not materials. Its position is solely in the strategic plane. You present a thesis, an argument, then you present a seemingly opposite antithesis. Then, by clashing the two together, you arrive at a synthesis. Sometimes the opposing points can cancel each other out, but a synthesis tends to be made. Nothing inherently wrong there, but it's how they are being used in the current context. The purpose of it here is to directly negate, to cancel, the idea or identity of a person or group presenting any form of opposition, and by extension, negating any propositions that person may have, often by not engaging with them directly. This creates what people call cancel culture. If I'm not a racist and have a list of demands to fix racism, and you disagree with me, you must be a racist, irrespective of what you have to say. And racists are the product of the racist, regressive, capitalist system. So anything you might say will lead to more systemic racism. At the core of their argument is the idea that America is a racist institution. If your argument is a branch, they target the root, you, the means of producing the laws of dialectics. Therefore, they don't engage in the argument. Why engage? They are higher in the evolutionary chain of systems of government. Anyone else is of a regressive mind, of a regressive system, of which Stalin claims an evolutionary dominance. If you don't enter the discourse, of which they hold the ideological checkpoints, by agreeing to everything they say, they target you. By presenting a thesis that the idea of solving inequality lies in the identity of Black Lives Matter, its seeming opposite is of identities opposing the organization Black Lives Matter and by extension the statement. The statement Black Lives Matter appears to exist, by social agreement, in symbiosis with the organization. You cannot oppose one without opposing the other. You can't alter the statement to separate the two. You can't keep the statement while opposing the goals of the organization. They are one and the same. How is it possible to oppose Black Lives Matter without being a racist? You oppose from a place of privilege, from a place separate from the lived experience of black people. In this incorrect use of Hegelian dialectics, the synthesis shows you can't care about black people as much as they do. They call to change the system while you may want to reform it. One is clearly a bigger idea than the other. Ideas and theories are pushed onto the content before it is read. Context is created over the content and is read in that order. Black Lives Matter supporters are advocating for the death of police, cold-blooded murder against those serving the community. That's the content some of them ask for. But because they have created a context before it, they view it as moral, no matter what information exists that invalidates their context. The context behind that invalidating information is a product of the system, the very thing they oppose. Any content can be viewed and have a new truth read over it, and in turn, defining it. The dissolution of hierarchies has functionally dissolved the hierarchies within argumentation in practice as well. Ad hominem and name-calling are a useful rebuttal, perhaps a more useful rebuttal than a counter-argument. Counter-arguments are often counterproductive against an academic or political leader, as they serve as roadblocks toward the revolutionary goal. In a social Darwinian ideology, threats and personal attacks are far more eloquent, because they better advance the revolutionary goal, and these revolutionaries are told to do so in texts like Rules for Radicals, which say, "Ridicule is man's most potent weapon," and further, "Cut off the support network and isolate the target from sympathy. Go after people and not institutions. People hurt faster than institutions." Hence why these actions are ubiquitous, and hence why weak-willed politicians cave, and the public at large remains silent in this social Darwinian context. In Marxism, your social being is also your definition of human being. That's why they say, black people are less than white people, and think they're correct and not racist. Their social being is in solidarity with the oppressed class. Further, that's why if you say, black people and white people are equal, you are considered a racist. You are automatically in solidarity with the oppressors. Your social being dictates how you ought to think. One side is a proletarian view, an oppressed view, and one is a bourgeois view, a privileged view. The privileged view is made from a socially agreed position of privilege, and is automatically considered incorrect purely by that position. That's why you're told, don't watch Fox, they have privileged voices. Their position is privileged, all their voices are privileged, all their methods are privileged, and it doesn't matter what their arguments are, what evidence they hold, what qualifications they hold, or even what race they are automatically incorrect, because they are benefiting from a system of inequality in a position of inequality, made possible by a regressive capitalist system. This bourgeois privileged view can be subject to any revolutionary act to discredit or destroy them, including lies, threats, and violence. Any act against them is considered morally correct. Stalin wrote about this. To bring about revolutionary goals, you must control the laws of producing dialectics. You are caught in a trap. This is a very specific Marxist attack on the United States and the world. They have camouflaged themselves as civil rights organizations to push communism on your country. It is a Marxist attack that has happened before, and it worked before. They're trying to silence you tactically. COVID-19 has made public gatherings reduced, difficult, or even illegal. Any public gathering of Trump supporters is demonized, yet such scrutiny tends not to fall on radical Democrat voters. They're also trying to silence you strategically. The thought police of Silicon Valley are attacking and demonizing all opposing discourse through deplatforming and demonetization, as well as by inaccurate fact-checking, removing information that might hurt a communist revolution. Curious that tech companies don't aim to hinder one. You'd think they would. The mainstream media read truth over the primary sources that they air, allowing them to write a new truth on top of it. In the event that someone views the primary source, the source is no longer considered true, because the reading over it is considered true. The mainstream media is using secondary sources to cancel the content and context of primary sources. How else can you run a racist, fascist, Nazi, Russia-loving Trump narrative unless you write over the primary sources and have people of great position and aura all nod their head in agreement? You naturally give in to the narrative due to peer pressure. Why would so many people get things so wrong? There are ways to fight back against this. I believe it's something to be won. It'll take some key steps and some stamina, as the Marxist threat will change form as it always does, and I believe will exist for quite some time. After all, Vladimir Lenin tried more than once to bring about a communist revolution in Russia before he succeeded. First, recognize that your enemy is Marxist. Not necessarily your average protester, of course, but certainly the organization behind it and those who fund it. As it is social Darwinian, its primary goal is power, and power by any means necessary. Recognize that Marxists take the form of your friends, your co-workers, your favorite celebrities, even family members. Many of them have been indoctrinated at university. The Marxist groups are very publicly active there. In the future, whether Trump wins or Trump does not, you are going to have to face that fact. The enemies of America, of freedom, equality, and a democratic republic, will take the form of the people you love. That is what they experienced in East Germany, as neighbour reported neighbour to the secret police, the Stasi, where, purely for thinking or acting differently, or even on the suspicion of doing these things, they were often imprisoned or never heard from again. An estimate claims 1 Stasi informant per 6.5 citizens. That's practically 1 informant per family. These Marxists are operating currently like Stasi. Many sleeper agents are possibly among your friends as they are among mine, and would certainly do more to rid you if they could. You must come to terms with this, and I will say it again. The enemy of America and the West has taken the form of the people you love. You, however, are still called to love them anyway. Now, if your friends and family will hate you for opposing Marxism, they'll aim to put you in a difficult position socially. Here's a question. What power do they actually have over you? Write a list of what they can actually do. Can your friends take away your house? Can they stop you watching television? From your meals, your gaming consoles, your car, your bed? The private property you own and the fundamentals you have within them are things they have no legal power to take. As it says in Rules for Radicals, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Imagination and ego can dream up many more consequences than any activist. But let me put it like this. You will be in an even worse social situation if you remain silent. One of the tenets of communism is the abolition of private property. One story from the Seattle Autonomous Zone told of a man who had his laptop, money, and other items stolen. He complained on social media when another person commented, telling him that it's not fair to say that they were stolen, that perhaps someone else needed it more than him, and to consider the loss of his items an unplanned donation, ending the comment saying, "You did good today, I'm proud of you." This is a real story. It happened in the last month. If you are silent and they win, they can take away your house, your television, your meals, your consoles, your car, your bed, even your own ability to pick your own friends. So don't worry so much about what they think of you. You didn't lose the privilege of being with them. They lost the privilege of being with you. You should protest. You should certainly protest. Think of Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Great Britain before Winston Churchill. He is most famous for appeasing Hitler's demands prior to the war in order to avert a war. When the Sudetenland was agreed by Britain to be annexed by Hitler, Churchill supposedly said, "You were given the choice between war and dishonour. You chose dishonour, and so you will have war." And indeed, that is what happened. Hold up signs crying out, "No appeasement, no dishonour," and any of the like. The mayor, the governor, the congressman or woman Whomever you're protesting needs to have it made known that history will record them as those who appeased evil and, in the end, threatened to be overcome by it. Churchill was still kind to Chamberlain after his mistake, but appeasement has a disgraceful record in the West, and no Democrat or Republican should stain themselves in this way. If you wish to affirm Trump, hold up placards of Churchill. Clearly, that is the kind of leadership that's needed in these times. Protect statues in your local area. Don't assume that someone is currently doing so. Find out. Make rosters if you need to. If there are none, start a group yourself. In Walter Benjamin's 1936 essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, he highlights that real objects have an aura, a mysticness about it, some objects more than others. A large tree, for example, has a greater aura than a small tree. Seeing an actor in person has more aura than seeing an actor on screen. An A-lister has more aura than a B-lister, a prime minister over any junior minister. Objects created with great skill have great aura. Objects mass-produced do not have so much aura. A Bible used to be chained in the Middle Ages. It was valuable and took years to reproduce even a single copy, that they couldn't afford for it to be damaged or stolen. Given the Bible's mass production today, people habitually moan and throw away the Bible and devalue its verses when presented to them. Have you ever locked a book? Mass production of objects affects our relationship to them, as well as the contents they contain. Benjamin theorized that in order to destroy a society's pride in itself, one must remove or destroy tangible reminders of a society's values, such as objects created with great skill, and flood the society with mass-produced products. This means the removal of statues and the promulgation of film as the primary mode of art. Originally, the essay was written to destroy the Nazi Party, but his theories are transplantable to enable the destruction of democratic societies. This is not a fringe essay. It was introduced to me at uni as the most cited essay in all of academia. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but I have not had any assessment dedicated to just a single essay, except for this one. So protect your statues, protect your identities, stand up for the national anthem and the beauty that is your country. All of these things contain aura. When you understand this, it's not unusual that they'll tear down a statue of Gandhi. At whatever level of government, organize the education and commission of bronze work or whatever material you wish to carve a statue out of, to first, totally replace every statue that has been torn down, be it of the same individual who was torn down or of another, and second, create more statues than before. This is standard practice in Western countries. This step is important even if Trump wins in a landslide, as statues of a country's history are a form of insurance for your country against those who denigrate it or attempt to erase its history for political gain. Such malicious actions do not disappear in the event of a Trump win, as we are now witnessing. Start your own community groups. They have infiltrated all manner of interest groups and infected them with Marxism, and will return to running more community groups when this episode comes to a close. Remember that Karl Marx saw his view as separate from any tradition that came before. As such, each Marxist-infused entity is different from the ones that existed before, even if they bear the same name. Classical feminism was staunchly pro-life. They abhorred the idea of women being used for sex and having their children aborted so women can be further used by men. Many minority groups shared a vision of an equal people in a better country. Marxism has infected so many of these groups to break away from those traditions. Terence Floyd, George Floyd's brother, says, "If I'm not here messing up my community, what are y'all doing? Let's do this another way." Sadly, his voice has been predictably drowned out by the community organizations claiming to act in his interests. It's going to take better community groups to serve the Floyds and other families and groups, and I cannot stress how important their creation will be to routing the Marxist grassroots power, of which much of their which much of their foundation is formed. Create job boards for those who have lost their jobs. If your workplace now works remotely, I see no reason why people in different states or even different countries can fulfill a role in an organization. From there, you create an organization that people can flock to for business, totally aware that your business is pro-First Amendment and pro-Trump. You saw what happened initially when Chick-fil-A stood their ground on traditional marriage. It'll be good for business. Assist your police. Even if you are unable to speak out against this movement because of the financial loss you might receive as a result, you can still covertly support your local police precinct. Core to these Marxists achieving what they want is demoralizing their opposition. Among their opposition are police. I want you, overtly and covertly, to keep police morale up. Write a letter, make a hamper, create an artwork, bake cookies, offer them supplies. Give them a constant stream of support. There are stories in Georgia of police having feces thrown at them. Offer to wash their clothes or buy them good laundry products. Get your friends together, get your family together. Set aside even just 1 hour. What a world of difference you could make with a single act of kindness. Don't assume someone else is already doing this. New York police are currently retiring in ridiculous numbers. I would rather the police be inundated with support than lacking of it. Make independent legal defense funds for police. Given that celebrities and left-wing groups are creating legal defense funds for rioters who destroy, loot, and attack the innocent and the police, there's no reason why one can't be created for the police or destroyed small businesses. Make more than one fund. They have more than one fund, why not you? Then, go fundraise or spread it on social media. People want to donate to these causes. They're looking for a way to help. Candace Owens put up a fundraiser that raised over $200,000 for an affected small business in a matter of hours before the hosts closed down the fundraiser, which means find another way to host one. In Australia, we have the case of a footballer, Israel Folau, who spread a difficult Bible passage on social media and was sacked for not removing it. As before, the first fundraiser was taken down, but he did not get discouraged. A second fundraiser was made for his legal defence by the Australian Christian Lobby, and people put forward $3 million to support him in spite of a vicious media out to get him, his family and his supporters. Not only did he settle out of court, and the remainder of the fund returned to those who donated, but now he's playing for a team that wants to extend his contract. A single individual is capable of creating these fundraisers to support the people who really need it the most. To the magnificent police force of America, do not leave the force. If you were told that Russians praising Stalin and Lenin wanted to take over New York and wanted you to leave, you wouldn't leave, would you? Yet when Americans praising Stalin and Lenin want to take over New York and want you to leave, you wouldn't think of leaving, would you? Is it correct to leave? No, certainly not. I know you're hurting out there and hurting by bureaucrats as well, but please stand your ground. Remember, if these Marxists want something from you, it's part of the means of production which they want to seize. Do they want to defund the police? It's because they cannot take your land with an armed guard defending it, nor can they hold land without one of their own, as we saw in Seattle. Do they need your submission? Yes. The existence of the police is part of essentialist dialectics, where morality is not fluid, and that all people need to be defended from bad people. Essentialist dialectics obliterate theirs, and you are the enforcers of its fruits. Make independent legal defense funds for police. Given that celebrities and left-wing groups are creating legal defense funds for rioters who destroy, loot, and attack the innocent and the police, there's no reason why one can't be created for the police or destroyed small businesses. Make more than one fund. They have more than one fund, why not you? Then, go fundraise or spread it on social media. People want to donate to these causes. They're looking for a way to help. Candace Owens put up a fundraiser that raised over $200,000 for an affected small business in a matter of hours before the host closed down the fundraiser, which means find another way to host one. In Australia, we had the case of a footballer, Israel Folau, who spread a difficult Bible passage on social media and was sacked for not removing it. As before, the first fundraiser was taken down, but he did not get discouraged. A second fundraiser was made for his legal defence by the Australian Christian Lobby, and Australians put forward $3 million to support him. Not only did he settle out of court, and the remainder of the fund returned to those who donated, but now he's playing for a team that wants to extend his contract. A single individual is capable of creating these fundraisers to support the people who really need it the most. To the magnificent police force of America, do not leave the force. If you were told that Russians praising Stalin and Lenin wanted to take over New York and wanted you to leave, you wouldn't leave, would you? Yet when Americans praising Stalin and Lenin want to take over New York and want you to leave, you wouldn't think of leaving, would you? Is it correct to leave? No, certainly not. I know you're hurting out there, and hurting by bureaucrats as well. But please, stand your ground. Remember, if these Marxists want something from you, it's part of the means of production which they want to seize. Do they want to defund the police? It's because they cannot take your land with an armed guard defending it. Nor can they hold land without one of their own, as we saw in Seattle. Do they need your submission? Yes, the existence of the police is part of essentialist dialectics. That morality is not fluid, and that people need to be defended from bad people. Good people need to be defended from bad people. Essentialist dialectics obliterate theirs, and you are enforcers of the fruits of its dialectics. At all times, do not consider their demands as wants. Do not consider their demands as solutions. Consider at all times their demands as needs. Needs they cannot pull off a communist revolution without. Police, if they want you gone, it's because they need you gone. They don't have enough power to suppress opposition otherwise. Do not get demoralized, and to the rest of the public, go physically out of your way to support the morale of your local precinct. Consider them as much a part of your family as they are a part of your community. Do not let them be estranged from you. And finally, to the police, President Trump can pardon you. If he wins re-election, he doesn't have to worry so much about what the media thinks of him. He can pardon police officers who have been targeted for just doing their job. If the communists realize police cannot be targeted so easily, they'll change tactics, and you will regain ground. As for some of these mayors and governors who are backing rioters and Black Lives Matter instead of police, do not call them incompetent. An incompetent man or woman can competently ask for help from those who are competent. That's the reality of working in a team. Incompetent means they would do a better job if they could, they just can't. I just don't think that's the case here for some of them. I don't believe they're that helpless. But are they in on it? Namely, socialist politicians. The fact is, even if they were to disagree with what's going on, they would be angering their voter base. They can't let go of power to protect the people. Right now, you cannot rely on help from genuine altruistic socialists. They are chained to the Marxist interest groups of their voter base. Any Democrat who hasn't spoken out against this should not be considered for re-election. Inform your friends. In person is good, on social media as well, and especially inform the apolitical. Inform them of the Marxist nature of this enemy calling for the downfall of the United States and its history. Don't assume they know. If everyone focused on convincing just one person to change their vote, you will create a more powerful movement than the one of 2016. I think on the parable of the talents. The Democrats are saying that you are so privileged to have so many talents that you should just bury them or hand them to brigands. That's the right use of the too many talents God gave you. But we know from the end of the parable that talents are to be used. If you have 5 talents, use all 5 talents to make more. If you have 2 talents, use both talents to make more. The man with 1 talent in the parable was scared. He buried it and invested in nothing. He had his talent taken away from him, and he was thrown out, where he will weep and gnash his teeth. so will we if we bury our talents when they are most desperately called for. They will be powerless without your cooperation. That is the truth, an inconvenient truth for them, one they do not want you to know about. You must resist at all times giving them power. Father James Aniagbu of Scotland gave a homily one Sunday, warning, yes, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, but further still, beware of wolves in shepherd's clothing. The Marxists today are well thought of in this manner. If you are a Christian, your days are numbered. That is very clear from the attacks the rioters made on churches and on statues. They see us as oppressors. They already tried to ban the Bible. They already view prayer as a tool of oppression. Whatever they go for first, they will come for you next. Repentance. Repentance is a need, not a want. The Bible is very clear, from Jonah to Jesus and before and after. Almost nothing is recommended more to save us from ourselves. Repentance is not finger-pointing at Democrats. It's finger-pointing at ourselves in the confessional. Repentance of a population can prevent a calamity. Nineveh did not fall because they listened to Jonah, repented and changed their ways. Sodom and Gomorrah did fall because they refused to change and repent. Prayer, fasting, and repentance. All of these are tried and true solutions, given by God Himself and practiced by God Himself. If you're religious, you recognize that God's providence and God's deliverance are very real things. It's telling God that, in spite of how capable you are, that all you have is God's providence, and that He can provide for you better than you can, and deliver you better than you can, that the eternal God, the eternal doctor, holds the true balm for your hurt nation, not government, institutions, or individuals. You understand that you're going to have to bring these wayward souls back one day, be they in ones or twos or in droves. You must be loving today, loving tomorrow, and ready to bring them back when they finally calm down. I once hated authority. It came from a place of real hurt. If they remain isolated because we were too proud to bring them back, they will be slim pickings for another communist revolution. Love is a balm from God. Stop speaking with calumny. I don't care how much you hate it. You hate what they're doing. It's a mortal sin. Don't be so vengeful in your talk when seeking justice. Remember, they are vengeful while seeking what they call justice too. The radicals are a minority. It's a common thought on the left that the right are full of heartless individuals. There are plenty who would want to be on your side right now, so give them an example they can be attracted to. Politics and conduct are rooted in charity. Politics and conduct are inseparable, and what can define a radical today is that they reject such notions. You know, at election time in Australia, we get these political cartoons where you have a big crowd of people all saying in unison, "We didn't vote because we didn't think it would make a difference." While it's good to ponder that fallacy in regard to November 3, I think it of further import to relate it back to prayer. How often have you ignored prayer, thinking it won't make a difference? How easy would it be among Christians to gather a crowd of the same size, all saying, "We didn't pray because we didn't think it would make a difference"? How much larger a crowd could be made of them saying, "We didn't pray for our enemies because we didn't think it would make a difference"? This election is not merely a test of courage. Principally, it's a test of faith. If you have time to laugh at them, you have time to pray for them. Right now, Western civilization appears locked in the upper room, where the apostles were, fearful of those outside. Pray for your country, and for the world, and for yourselves. Pray for the gift of courage from the Holy Spirit, and His many other gifts. In the test of faith, either you recognize God's primacy as instrumental to the defeat of evil, or you do not. Are you so proud to think you can do it without Him? State your reasons. President Trump prayed at the shrine to Pope John Paul II, known as one of the key figures who helped end communism throughout Europe. A Protestant praying to a Catholic saint? I don't think that's an accident. Do not assume Trump will win. Do you think Trump assumes he will win? Many assumed Hillary Clinton would win, and ultimately lost. Don't make the mistake in the Hare and the Tortoise, and be caught napping underneath the tree, so sure of your victory that in the end you couldn't catch up in time. While Marxists destroyed parts of the nation and denigrated its people, its history, and its institutions, we have napped under a tree for a month. Your hour of trial is here. Wake up! Can you not stay awake for 1 hour? Or are you so proud that you would emulate Hillary Clinton's loss and blame everyone but yourself? As is written in Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel The Brothers Karamazov, for no one can judge a criminal until he recognizes that he is just such a criminal as the man standing before him, and that he perhaps is more than all men to blame for that crime. If I had been righteous myself, perhaps there would have been no criminal standing before me. This uprising might not have happened if I were a better man. If I knew the truth and did nothing, I am doubly to blame as they are. God despised lukewarmity, as he says in Revelation 3:16, "So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth." We have to recognize that this grew on our watch, and did so often through our negligences, comforts, and our collective falling away from God. Peasants and sometimes illiterate farmers of the past were more organized and more willing to do the right thing than we are today. Does your education and technology abstain you from making sacrifices today? Who, what, when, where, why, and how? If you do not come to a conclusion, do not stop asking the questions until you do. Make these Marxist groups as pressured as possible to reveal them. Questions do not end where Black Lives Matter begins. Why are they so sure of their utopia when so much evidence is against them? Why are they so sure their theories are facts? There are two distinct definitions in relation to the word theory. A theory in science is one of the most ironclad statements one can make. A theory first begins as a hypothesis, which is then thoroughly tested by experiments and the results analyzed. Then you present your conclusion based on the results. Academics then have to agree with your results. There must be a consensus, and the results must be reproducible. But theory also has another definition, where it is simply a set of beliefs, given credence by one's social aura or by social agreement. One person or one group can say any set of beliefs is a theory. It does not require experimentation. It does not require analysis. Rather, the hypothesis is also the conclusion. Many of these Marxist theories fall into the latter. When the theories are put into practice, they say, that wasn't real Marxism. Yet violence against the bourgeoisie is specifically stated as needed to pull off a communist revolution in the manifesto. It is real Marxism before they pull off their so-called utopia. When the steps are put into practice, it horrifies everyone the world over. Often today, their hypotheses are not well informed by tactical data. Rather, their strategies developed in isolation from it. Why? How are they so blind to tactical data, where primary sources are often found? Father Michel de Certeau wrote an essay called Walking in the City. He wrote this prior to 9/11. He asks, how does one best get to know New York City? Does one stand atop the World Trade Center, where you can see the shape of the city and see the most of its sprawl? Or do you best get to know New York by traveling on the ground, where, even with a limited vision, you can experience its sounds, smells, and secrets? Clearly, exploring it on the ground, the tactical view, better informs you. He writes that conclusions about cities made purely from strategic positions are illusory and self-serving. And for the city to maintain itself and its image, he writes, it must first repress all physical, mental, and political pollutions that would compromise it. Second, develop its own system of values and remove the tactics of all people and traditions that disagree. And third, fashion an identity for this illusory subject. The space that generates the illusory subject is also the subject's blind spot. It cannot accurately identify where it came from. This essay was used to analyze the falsehood of concept cities, where today a concept city has been created over America by Marxists calling themselves Black Lives Matter, as a city and a nation of systemic racism, of which proper analysis is impossible, and all tactics used to analyze what they ignore or miss are stamped out. All opposition must not exist. Only the concept city exists. You see this paradigm often with the Democrats and with the fake news. Russia, 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 they claim. Yet they want a Marxist political system as modeled by Russia's Stalin and Lenin, complete with violent uprisings and intimidation and killing of groups they don't like. I kid you not, they have called out in protests. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. Russian emulation is their entire political goal for America, namely Russian emulation when Russia was at its most frightening. People have been comparing this situation to the Joker movie, but I think it's more apt to compare it to The Dark Knight Rises, where mostly anonymous vigilantes launch an asymmetric hostage situation on the city of Gotham, securing it tactically and strategically. Cops are demonized and defenseless and buried underground. Prisoners are set free, telling them they are victims, and calling Blackgate Prison a symbol of oppression, where mob law rules the city, where the ability to make discourse between others or institutions is not allowed, where kangaroo courts sentence people without evidence into death or exile, and where citizens no longer have their freedom, and where it is not realistically possible for someone outside to give it to them. Winston Churchill says, "Never give in, never give in, never, 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 in nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honour and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy." In spite of their numbers, I truly do believe it is a matter of their bark being bigger than their bite. But as for how far spread out this movement is, let me put it like this. I am taught cultural Marxism at a regional university, a university that has been very good to me, and often told that it is a good thing that there's no such thing as absolute or objective truth. I am encouraged to read the Communist Manifesto. Both large and small theatres openly stage and produce pro-Marxist, pro-communist works, and everyone applauds them at the end. This is in regional Australia. In my city, socialist posters tend to litter throughout. At my university, posters of Joseph Stalin have hung on the sides of buildings. The current situation will not be the last. Conservatives are constantly behind on their attempts to analyse what's going on. Marxists do not work mysteriously, but they do work differently. It's like observing the goings of a foreign country. If you truly wish to understand what is going on, you must become bilingual. Marx writes that his view of the world is not founded in any prior tradition, hence how alien it appears and operates. Understand how they use Marxist dialectics to observe the world, and you will often predict their movements. You will not be so caught unawares. The system that executes the laws of producing dialectics exists within our social structure. Contrary to their claims, you cannot remove that system, you can only control it. The path to controlling it lies in deterring its use long enough so that it can be controlled. I personally wonder if that is why freedom of speech is a higher constitutional liberty than even the right to bear arms. It is possible to destroy the systems that govern every other amendment. It is not possible to destroy discourse within a social structure. It is possible to deter it or control it. It's quite curious. They state that these systems lead to racism and death. Yet their actions, their lynchings in person, their absolute disdain for police and white people in general, not to mention their hateful mob tactics online, lead to people's suicides. It's quite cruel when disagreement leads to death. We had one in Australia, where a young man killed himself after he was mobbed online for protesting drag queen story time. Often when you're building a Marxist utopia, death is part of the process. The horrors you are currently seeing are standard when they don't have power. When they do have power, then like Lenin and Stalin before, death is simply a part of the process of cementing their power. Do you not think the mob won't dob in their friends to their Marxist overlords? I've been targeted by people I lived with for years. If you recognize that, then you understand that you really don't have anything to lose by resisting. Rather, you have everything to lose by appeasing, as, once they have power, they'll target you anyway. They have nothing to offer you except your chains. Fear is a core part of the enemy's strategy. They don't hold strong legislative power yet. They want you to believe they do, so that they may finally have it. It doesn't matter if they're called Black Lives Matter. If they're radical Marxists, you don't support them. The Marxists despise those who can articulate the horrors of their methods. They must intimidate as many people as possible, not solely for submission, but to prevent a culture of academia speaking out. As it is, I am an academic. My allegiance is to the truth. If I knowingly tell anything less than the truth, then I am not an academic. I am a propagandist. And I was not raised to be a propagandist. As a Catholic, I believe in Our Lady of Fatima, Queen of Heaven and Earth, who appeared to 3 peasant children in Portugal in 1917, who warned of the falling of many souls into hell and of the spread of Russia's errors throughout the world, which had experienced its communist revolution that very year. At the close of the conflict against the devil, she said, the final battle will be waged over marriage and the family. Yet in spite of the horror she warned, she also said, in the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. I do not know more than the Mother of God. She's more likely to be correct than generations of people thinking she could be wrong. I will live my life according to that prediction. I have no reason to fear my defeat when a victory greater than I can imagine is on its way. Do not live vicariously through your president or through your favorite conservatives, whether it's Tucker Carlson, Liz Wheeler, or others. Do not be ideologically lazy. Communism is at your doorstep. Tucker Carlson has asked you not to be silent. He has even mentioned that his show is the most watched in America at the moment. People want to beat this, and you have the numbers to beat this. The Marxists do not want you to know that, or worse still, believe that you can make a difference. If you pick to sit this one out and you pick wrong, you might never have the chance to pick again. You will only lose your country if you give it to them. You are not governed by a racist system. It is the system in the Western tradition of William Wilberforce and Abraham Lincoln. It is the system that destroyed systemic racism. On my part, as a man whose degree is filled with cultural Marxism, I recognize a good portion of it. What happens in your country affects my own as well. It's important for me to help you, and I will be assisting you from afar. As an aside, I've left a link to a fundraiser for an Indian charity that was ignored by my Black Lives Matter supporting friends. The COVID-19 lockdown has hurt this charity. They would appreciate your assistance. Do not despair of trying and failing. Do not despair of trying and not being heard. Despair, rather, of not trying at all. Meditate on that thought until the reality of it rings true. Do not lose your country playing the bench warmer. You are America. You are the striker. As Dostoevsky writes in The Brothers Karamazov, almost all capable people are terribly afraid of being ridiculous and are miserable because of it. My name is Andrew Creeman, and I'm a creative arts student. God bless you, and I'll see you again.